Good afternoon. I'm Liu Dao. I've been working at Pomerleau for 3 years now. I'm more on the actual sites with BIM for the construction projects. Today I'm going to be introducing with my colleague Basil, who joined us a year ago. We're going to be making our presentation. So, we now have projects everywhere around Canada in each of the provinces, so the values have been re-examined and updated. And as you can see, innovation has remained. In other words, to cultivate innovation, there are several aspects that we take into consideration. Mainly our innovation team, BIM VDC, is growing year after year, as well as a great deal of research and development. We're working in partnership with several university research chairs, and in fact, there's one that we are representing here today. As I indicated to you before, there are several BIM projects. 75% of our projects in 2017 called upon BIM, and there are more than 40 BIM VDC specialists throughout the country. Currently, there are 40 projects that work thanks to BIM. All sorts, from the bidding, the design, and the actual working on the building. Today, we really want to be working with BIM, and we want to have fun while we're doing it. Let's talk about video games, but also virtual reality for construction. We don't want to do the architect's work and faithfully represent in realistic photography the different projects, but we want to have a communication tool, a clear communication tool, in order to better understand each other and to immerse ourselves in the space during the course of the construction. Research and development was launched 3 years ago now in collaboration with the Industrial Research Chair from Pomerleau, as well as GRID at ETS. There were 3 waves, if you will, of research. And it focused mostly on the use of this technology in the world of construction. So the needs in construction. At the beginning, the idea was mostly to visualize and interact with the BIM models that we have at hand, while having an excellent graphic quality, and also to immerse ourselves into the project thanks to virtual reality with several different peripheral accessories. In the course of some of our research, we've established that we wanted to better structure, better take into account the database with the visualization of virtual reality. We call upon several technologies. Not only in virtual reality are we interested, but also scatter plots that we want to take into account, and also augmented reality, as well as other functions that we will be speaking to you in a little while. And during the third research wave that Basil was part and parcel of, we sought to personalize the virtual environment according to the needs of the project, because each project is distinct and virtual reality is not applied in the same fashion or to the same degree for each project. And then visualization of the deadlines, 4D simulation, and augmented virtual reality is also comes into play in the pre-construction phase. So Basil is going to be explaining to you our different research axes. So to get to these objectives that we had set for ourselves, we've had to choose a development platform that takes into account the classic platform with classic video game video to come up with something in 3D. So the 3 major elements that exist, Unity in Montreal and CryEngine. When we started, this was at the embryonic phase for the most part. Today, they're more or less all at the same level, but at the time we had to choose. CryEngine, we had to set aside rather quickly because there was very little document and the community was rather restricted. No tutorial, so that was important. Then we looked at Unreal and Unity. Unity allowed for a very quick development in terms of coding, whereas Unreal allowed us to have nice graphic design. We had chosen at the time to go with the coding aspect of things. That was very important, which is why we opted for Unity. The true interest of these virtual reality platforms, these video games, is that one can come up with something that one can put into practice regardless the type of systems that we use, PCs, etc., iPad, tablets, goggles, what have you. So you come up with a sole file, copy and paste on the Office, noting any copyright, things are kicked off instantly. So the different deployment tools, so there are several accessories or props that we can call upon. I'll go through them quickly. So the Google Cardboard that allows you to stock and to look at things with a 360-degree angle, and your computer, a type of virtual reality, if you will. And the finished version is also very realistic. So the interest here is that the finish will be excellent, and it's also extremely mobile. And then you have the iPads and other tablets where you can use a real software, also GPS and other types of similar instruments to increase the augmented reality. And then you have the other types of casks, and the models are huge. Augmented reality to superimpose the 3D realities as well as what already exists in the site. You can superimpose the images, and also your computer, because augmented reality are not always useful alone. All the tools that we work on and that we develop in view of virtual reality can work even on very low-tech computers or on Surface Pros. But the purpose is also to be able to explore the project with interactivity of virtual reality without really it being submersive, because yes, sometimes we do get seasick. There's a kind of seasickness that occurs if we get lost in this virtual reality. One has to pay attention to this. So as Basil explained, we've worked on our visualization tool with virtual reality. Why? Because the software that already exists on the market only partially answers our needs, and also we wanted to avoid scattering ourselves and having to use several different elements of software for specific needs. So for the visualization aspect or side of things, we went over the existing software. The four big ones are Enscape, that allow us to work alongside Revit with very realistic images, very practical, but it's only from a visualization point of view. Autodesk also have the same principles, allow for the same thing. There's also the Revisto tool that adds a collaborative aspect. And here, the idea is not for things to be only practical. You can add aspects, traffic, equipment, automobiles, etc., trucks, what have you. You can add elements. Oops. So all of those tools that I've mentioned are very practical and perform well, but they're not flexible enough. We were looking for something that would be useful at each phase of the project and that could answer the needs of each specific client. So the next thing we thought we would do that was appreciated by the teams in the site is to put the 2D projects in the virtual cask module. So we were asked to come up with a measuring tool such as glue. We have geodesics aspects also that are included. So in using the model, sometimes we realized that it was frustrating to see certain elements, but not all of them. We wanted to know the dimensions or perhaps the distance that was left between two elements, and it wasn't possible. So, but after that, we worked on it, and the tool became very much in demand. Visualization of the deadlines, especially with the different phases. This is the SHIM project with visualization of the different sequences for demolition. This allowed us to optimize 3 times the demolition sequences and phases for our subcontract and to optimize the different deadlines or calendar. This allowed us to suggest a revised calendar to make up for the 6 weeks tardiness. So all of these details, we were able to visualize them to better understand the complexity and the different interrelationships that one wouldn't necessarily see with another type of diagram, a Venn diagram, for instance. Here's a visualization of the different phases of the project. Here we have the airport as a project. It's a broader picture of the transfer center. So there are several types of passengers or rather travelers who go through here, different phases, different facilities, different types of constructions. You have some travelers that can't be found in the same place as others. So it's important. All of this needs to be visual for the people working in the airports, but also the client experience people. One has to understand where they're going to be positioned and for how long this is going to last, and if there's too much traffic, what this is going to look like, if there will be zones that will be overcrowded, etc. So it's a very useful tool in order to communicate the construction tools and the different construction phases. Another aspect was for the Hôpital Saint-Justine Hospital for children. And the medical teams asked us to take into account the point of view of the children and the adults, so those who would be working as well as the patients. So we installed highly specialized equipment. We wanted to see if it was possible to adapt it specifically to the children. Also, on the sites, we're able to call upon virtual reality to review or re-examine a model with a predetermined path that allows us to not forget some critical sectors and to be able to go back on the same path several times with several stakeholders so that everybody sees the same thing over, but from a different point of view. It allows us to stick to our path. So our research axis took into account scatter plots for virtual reality or augmented reality. Here we have Parc Jean Drapeau, so virtual reality and not augmented. The point here is to use GPS to reference ourselves to the model and to superimpose it to what already exists with a webcam. So in way of summary, there is software that exists for visualization, and those are great, but we want to adapt to the needs of every single client. So we needed to develop things further. It was indispensable, which is why we're focusing on our tools. The last axis would be a 4D simulation with 4D and the creation of such a tool. There's a Synchro, Fusa that are very powerful softwares. The principle remains the same. We want to have our own method for creation. So this is the first goal that we've attained, to use the Unity with the interactive features. The next point would be to create 4D simulation with the people on the site and while making it fun and creative, and calling upon what Unity already does with the video game, but in such a way as to have our own creative system. So virtual reality does not allow only the possibility of seeing the finished program ahead of time, but it's also a good communication tool during the construction phase with our different stakeholders. And as well for our clients, communication of the temporary facilities, especially with already existing projects, was very beneficial. As well, in order to be able to communicate the design and the design challenges during the course of the meetings. And we used it on the construction sites and when we were communicating with the subcontractors. And we also used it to confirm the positioning of specialized material with our final users or end users. The example that we like to mention is the Baie-Saint-Paul Hospital, where we introduced a virtual reality to the surgeons as well as the nurses in order to validate the position of specialized equipment, and as well in order to avoid changes on the site. And these changes were brought forth 6 times with the 3D model. And it was a positive outcome. I don't have anything else to say. It was good. Also, for the specialized equipment, mainly in maintenance or in the mechanical rooms, there's also use of specialized equipment. They're everywhere. So it's very good for the communication with our subcontractors. So we use this virtual reality on the sites, in construction, and in coordination with the subcontractors. I do it for the installation sequences, and when the subcontractors arrive, they can see the mechanical room. We've coordinated a mechanical room with conveyors at the airport, and they're very happy and satisfied to be able to walk around the space that they're going to be building. And for the project teams, it's good for the general presentation of the project as well. It helps them visualize planning. We also want to increase augmented reality, look at it from a more in-depth point of view for our operations. So augmented or virtual reality is good, but there's more that can be done for operations and maintenance, especially towards the end of construction, for the servicing and the quality control side of things. It's possible to identify visually the differences between what was actually done, installed, and what was designed with the model in augmented reality. Furthermore, in terms of preventive maintenance or for operations per se, it's also possible to visualize the components behind the walls or on ceilings, the ducts, and other equipments that are usually not visible because there's an obstacle. Another future development that we would like to tackle is the vocal commands. So with videos, we use sticks, and we understood the limitations of these sticks. It's very basic. They're easy to manipulate, but the interaction is not really very satisfying. But if things are too complex, nobody will use that either. So we want to implement vocal command to diversify things, so voice recognition systems and that sort of thing, to increase things, increase the experience. Any questions?
Est-ce que nous avons des questions?
Do we have questions? I have one for you. The innovation process at Pomerleau, how did that unfold in order to build such a platform? What was the reaction, and how did things happen within your organization to get to the actual platform? Well, as we explained beforehand, it started 3 years ago with the need to better communicate on site, but as well to communicate all the construction details. So we started with our first research project, and that was simply to export the data of a model that we already have, architects, engineers, and also sometimes our very own models, to visualize things and to explore. So that's how it started. And after having implemented it on site, that's where we realized we had other needs, and it was possible for us to introduce the 2D plan. Because sometimes I would walk around and I didn't know where I was anymore. But we'd go far through a construction site, and then I'd lose myself, and I'd have to start back and find the main entrance once again. Any more questions? Thank you very much.